Am I live here? Oh, I am. It wasn't even on when I went to the bathroom. I'm really happy about that. Oh boy, I got too many layers of things here. Got a stole and a jacket and a microphone and all kinds of stuff. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's always this crazy mad dash down the hill to get here in the mornings. Can we hear this all right?
Sounds good.
I've learned that what we pray for is not as important as what we pray with. If you want to know me, stick around and find out more. If you want to dance with me, then walk across that ballroom floor. If you want to see me, open up your eyes and look. If you want to know the truth, just ask, 'cause I'm an open book. Ask, 'cause I'm an open book. Just ask. If you want to know me, you have to be willing. And if you want to dance with me, then get up. This is an action step. If you want to see me, just open up your eyes and look around. I'm everywhere. And if you want to know the truth, just ask. Science of Mind teaches us that every thought is a prayer. So does that mean that everything in the manifest world is the response to a prayer? Did our parents pray us into existence? I often wondered about that. I'm the youngest of three. I have two older siblings. I trail them by a few years. And I asked my mom once, true story, if I was an accident. And she looked at me over her glasses and said in her very proper English accent, "Don't be ridiculous. You were all accidents." Clearly, she didn't pray me into existence. Seriously, though, what is prayer? It's something I've devoted a lot of time to thinking about. Is it an emergency remedy? As soon as something bad happens, okay, God, I promise I'll never, ever, ever, ever. Is it part of our lives? Because I think that whether or not we like it, it's part of our lives. We have to abandon any notion of prayer that resembles kneeling by the bed before sleep and asking God for a puppy. Prayer is our constant dialogue with Source. So the question is, how do we do it? Many years ago, I had a mentor named Kenneth George Mills, and my sons met him, and Chris then was 5, and he had a question burning a hole in his pocket, and he looked up at it, and he said, and he was so nervous you could hear his breath. It was so cute. And he looked up at him, and he said, "How is it you became so high in everything that you do?" And you have to appreciate this man was he was a world-class concert pianist, a poet, a philosopher, a writer, a haute couture designer, an artist. I mean, he was an incredible real-life example of a Renaissance man. And he was very kind, and he bent over and he looked at Christopher and he said, "When I was young, I practiced and practiced the piano until I could tell my fingers to do anything, and they would do it. And then I realized that if I could control my fingers that way, then I could control my mind as well." So this was a man who spent his entire life practicing presence. This is the nature of prayer, to practice thinking right. Learning to manage our thinking is integral to our clear relationship with Source. Most of us live by default, at least a portion of the time. I certainly know I do. we don't actually think, we just regurgitate the past, and we sort of ruminate over losses and hurts, and these become the subconscious tapes that we play. I think we've all heard this spoken about before. When I was a teenager, my dad used to tell me that there were African tribes that would really highly prize me, and that I had duck's disease. Translation, I had a butt like Flo from those old Andy Capp cartoons, and my legs were too short, my butt was too close to the ground. Now, my mother had her own marvelous version of this. She used to say, "Mummy's little football player." So, as far as I could tell, I looked like this. I even got the flat head on the back there. I remember once, it was after I moved out, my mom sent me a sweater, and I kid you not, the arms came down to here. It was a men's large, and I remember holding it up going, what the heck? But I wore it. My internal belief that I was short and stout, and therefore not terribly attractive, had taken pretty firm root by then, and that translated into not good enough. And it didn't matter how many people told me that I was small or pretty. It wasn't what I saw when I looked in the mirror. I was telling Reverend Bonnie a little while ago, I was about 30-something, and I happened to walk past a full-length mirror, and that I sort of didn't realize was there, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw this little thing go by, and I went, oh my God, I'm little. Because I had to catch my conscious mind unawares to see myself in the mirror. It's like the scene from What the Bleep. She looks in the mirror and it goes, you know. That's not what everybody else saw when they looked at her, but that's what she saw when she looked in the mirror. My creativity took a real pounding from that not good enough thing. My artwork was lousy, my writing was unpublishable, and my voice was never going to be good enough. And interestingly enough, while I made decent money, I invested it in a perpetual disappearing act. The mind is a very, very powerful thing. To be clear, on one point, this, I know I said some things in my last talk about my dad, and, I might be painting my parents out to be monsters here, and that's not true, because they were amazing people. They just had their stuff too. They imparted a lot of gifts to me, and I'm very grateful for those gifts. And none of us are solely made up of negative beliefs. We take on these messages, but those beliefs can be a gift. When a tape is played enough times that it makes our lives uncomfortable, and when we get good and sick of being uncomfortable, we can see it for what it is, which is usually an untruth that we were told, or maybe that we told ourselves. Pain is a common tool for personal growth. It's quite effective, but we don't have to do it that way. It's just not the truth of who we are. So what is true? Truth is the unchanging, capital T, capital U. Truth is what is unchanging. That's the divine nature of it. Imagine that you have two hooks on the wall. One hook is for what is real, that's capital R, real, and the other hook is for everything else. And then stand sentry at the gateway of your own thinking and just watch who goes by and choose which hook you're going to hang each thing on. This has been a practice that I've tried to do for many, many years. It's been a big part of my life's journey. Interestingly, I was raised in a completely agnostic home. I never once recall hearing the word God or any discussion of any spiritual matters whatsoever. Not sure how my sister and I fell out the gate the way we did, but whatever the case may be. We lived way out in the country, and I spent, as I already mentioned, I trailed my older brother and sister by a few years, so I spent a lot of time alone out in the fields, and I loved it. I would lie on the ground, and I'd feel it just solid beneath me, and I'd look at the sky, and I would see it vast above me, and I felt connected. I felt myself melt into nature. I had that feeling of being one. And I didn't know it then, but I had already begun spiritual practice. Those were the seeds. Some religions teach us that prayer is basically a request to some external benevolent being, and that all prayers are answered, and sometimes the answer is no. And that, I have to tell you, even from the time I was a little girl, that never made sense to me. It was like the weather forecast. There's a 30% chance of rain, which means there's a 70% chance it won't, so whatever happens, the prediction was correct. I've thought a lot about that every thought is a prayer thing. And we all know that just because something passes across our mind, it doesn't mean that it instantly happens. Think of all the parents out there. If you leave your toys on the floor again, you're going to trip over one and land on your face. Ah, look out! You know, it's just not that straightforward. There has to be other components to it. The evidence is actually all around us. Is your life experience mirroring your hopes, your dreams, or is it mirroring your fears? It's probably a combination. I know for a lot of my life, the accomplishments of other people were just a great mechanism to trigger that not good enough button thing that had been going on. So my stuff was never as good as their stuff. And I finally reached the point where I just wasn't willing to sit on the edge of the dance floor watching everybody dance and go through shame and guilt and jealousy. It was horrible. And even though outwardly it didn't look like that's what was happening, inwardly that kind of was what was happening. And I got sick of it. It was like watching all these people and believing that they had some special relationship with Source. Well, the truth is they did. But the other truth is that we all do. The only question is how you want to engage in that relationship. There's another quote by Dr. Mills I really like. He said, "Prayer is the attitude in which you die to your limits and ask for the descent of the God self so that you can realize how to stand as man." I love that. The great mystery. Has anybody wondered what the answer to the life, the universe, and everything is, the great mystery? The answer is there is no mystery. It's been explained to us, and it's been spelled out in many ways and in many, many times across time. We are divine beings co-creating our lives, having an earthly experience. And here's a news flash. It probably actually isn't a news flash for most of you, but anyway, God isn't a he or a she, and it doesn't choose which of our prayers to answer. It is a field of possibility for us to practice the law and realize our own divinity. Drop a ball on planet Earth and it will fall to the ground. Keep your mind in alignment with the divine and you will have a divine experience. In the Secrets of the Last Mode of Prayer, that book I had, is it around here somewhere? Oh, well, there it is. No, it's good, thanks. Wonderful book by Greg Braden, and highly recommend it. He talks about how ancient beliefs and science are beginning to make sense of one another, bridging the gap between what used to be just called pure faith and to the provable. So science is able to discuss what is now often referred to as the field and describes it as a tightly woven web that makes up the underlying fabric of creation. So in short, literally, the blanket of the mind of God. Just imagine wrapping that around yourself every night before you go to sleep. He says, when we look into the space between us and another person, or the space between the nucleus and the electron, or the vast distances between the stars and galaxies that appear empty to us, the field is there. And this gives us a context to understand spiritual wisdom in scientific conversations. In addition to connecting all things, the field as a pulsating, shimmering, living substance. Can you picture that? Provides us with a mirror, and through it, creation reflects our innermost feelings and beliefs in the form of our relationships, our careers, and our health, or in short, our whole lives. And as Doug read from that great book, just as the ripples, and I just want to say it again, just as the ripples radiate from the place that a stone is thrown into a pool of water, or sometimes unconscious thoughts, feelings, emotions, and beliefs create disturbances in the field. And those will become the blueprints for our lives. So, what kind of a stone are you throwing? How hard are you throwing it? How high up did it go before it hit? How big are the ripples? What do they look like? What do they feel like? What do they taste like? We need to pay attention. He goes on to tell us about how the ancients prayed with the feeling that their prayer had already been answered. I know that Bram talked about this last week. They prayed with the feeling that the prayer had already been answered. So they conjured the sensory responses to that which they were seeking. So they smelt the moist earth. They felt the rain on their faces. They witnessed the corn grow tall. They were praying with. In India, people do a lot of chant and mantra practice, and if you needed, for example, to be fearless for something, you might call upon Durga. You say, Om Dum Durga Ye Namaha, and you do that 108 times a day for 40 days. Or maybe you're starting a business and you want to make sure there's no obstacles and that your business flourishes, so you might call on Ganesh to help you. Om Gum Ganapatye Namaha. And what you're actually doing in this mantra practice is taking the resonance or the vibration of the seed syllables for that essence, and they are tuning their bodies. These largely glasses of water that we are, they're tuning their bodies so that their body will be a like frequency to that which they seek, and then act as a magnet. So if you want a glass of water, you have to have a glass. If you tune yourself to the vibration of everything's falling apart and going to hell in a handbasket and I hate my life, I can pretty much guarantee you that a lot of things that are vibrating in that sort of low density, like that power versus force, David Hawkins, Bram also referred to that. The different emotional states actually have different vibrational qualities. So enlightenment is up there around 1,000, and love and peace and joy are a little bit under that. Shame brings up the rear at 20, by the way. Shame is the one that's going to really pull you down. So whatever you cast your attention upon, where you put your focus of attention, is how you are tuning yourself. And that's what you're going to attract into your life. So it's just a matter of standing gate at the center of thought, watching what goes by and going, oh, that's baloney, that goes on this hook. Ooh, that's a good one, that goes on this hook. I just blew through a whole bunch of that. So prayer is, just to reiterate, not a request to some external force. It is a personal decision to transport yourself from one mental state to another in order to experience an adjustment in thought, feeling, and circumstance. An adjustment in mind, which will shift your feelings, which will shift your vibration, which will then call forth what it is that you seek. You can't expect good results if you get up in the morning and put in an order for love and peace and then spend the rest of the day having an argument with anger and agitation. It's not going to work for you. Prayer is a decision to focus on God being, and not always an easy one. Also something I know firsthand very well. When we're in victim mode, there's a weird kind of a wind that goes on there in the egoic mind. I don't really understand it. I can't describe it, but it's like some part of us feels like it's getting something it deserves to stay in that little victim place. And it can feel really difficult to let go and pray when part of you is just screaming, this isn't fair, I didn't do anything, it's not my fault. It's not my fault, I wasn't there, I didn't do it. How come I have to do the work? Has anyone ever felt that? Look at this terrible situation. I mean, how come I'm the one who has to do all the work here? They're just as bad. Guess what? We do have to do all the work. It's our creation. It's our circumstance. It's our experience. We co-created it at the very least. So, guess what? And how do we survive those hurts? How do we learn to commune with the divine when we're in such deep pain and the egoic mind is fighting every single step of the way? And the answer is as simple as it is difficult. Hurt and wisdom are just two extremes of the same experience. So there has to be a way to step back and go, okay, there's a really long stick. I got hurt at this end, I got wisdom at this end, and right about now I'm here, but I'd like to be over here. Well, just acknowledging that is automatically going to punch you to about here. Then it looks a little bit easier. We have to begin with a decision to lift ourselves up. This is what clears the space to do something. So that decision, okay, there's a little bit of room in here. I think I might be able to do something now. And then we can remind ourselves that the small self might be in pain, but the divine self is a clear pool of water just waiting for us to dive in and feel that silky, cool liquid slide past your skin. See the light sending its beams into the deep. And notice now how what pained you is sort of somewhere else. You're in this life-affirming water. It's holding you. And in this place, you know the truth of your being. You know who and whose you are. Years ago, I had a drink of water, and then a bunch of time went by, and I had another one. Years ago, I was told something that really made me sit up. How can you express things like hate or use words like hate and not realize that you are in part responsible next time somebody gets stabbed in Central Park? That's a pretty big statement. Except that it's really very black and white. We are either one or we're not. And if we're in the consciousness of the one mind, everything that we put into that pool, huge, huge pool of water, and everybody's got their own little dye kit, you know, like what do you color Easter eggs with and stuff? You know, drop, 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 drop. And you're either putting in all the light colors or you're putting on all the purple and black and red, and it's purple, ew. Who would do that? One of the conditions that we face is that we live in a world with a bunch of other people, and they're all impressing their beliefs onto the field. And we do seem to experience the effects of what happens in the world around us. So it's really easy to say, well, I can't do anything about that, and I can't do anything about that. But we go right back to that one consciousness. Yes, we can. If there's one mind, we know that every time we do something to choose to not pollute the pool and to do something to extract some pollution from the pool by lifting ourselves into a higher frequency, we are contributing to the health of that water, to the health of that pool. So practice prayer. Lift the quality of your thoughts to stay in alignment with a higher frequency. Grow an inner circle of people who support the highest version of you. Remove yourself from negative input. Choose uplifting ideas, books, music, movies. I was talking to a young girl last night for a group that was staying at the Domes, and she just loves horror films and you know, she's all over that stuff. And I'm like, she's 22 years old. What are you filling your mind with? Anyway, fill your mind with beauty. Get rid of the things around you that just look ugly or old or you don't like. Keep flowers in the house. Surround yourself with things and with people that warm your heart. The Navajo tradition, and if anybody here speaks Navajo, I'll be delighted to be corrected on this pronunciation after the service, but the Navajo tradition describes a way of looking at life that places responsibility for our happiness or our suffering squarely on our own shoulders. And they say, Nijoni go'o bil iina, or something similar. The translations vary a bit, but essentially they say the beauty that you live with, the beauty that you live by, the beauty upon which you base your life. It sounds kind of simple when you put it that way. So all of us together now, Nijoni go'o bil iina. Growing a relationship with prayer is a personal journey. I went from workshop to workshop and class to class, intrigued by different ideas and attracted to seemingly evolved other people. Man, sure wish I was as perfect, whole, and complete as they are. And finally, through whatever steps I took, I began to embody that I am perfect, whole, and complete. I am a perfect Liliane, and conceivably the only one in the universe, whether I was prayed into existence by my mother or not. There's still tapes running, but I'm better able to observe them. I'm a bit better at learning to laugh at myself, and I'm learning that I can actually create shift through prayer. Dr. Mills again put it this way, and this is one that I would like to allow to resonate about 6 different directions. If we are going to stem the tide and cause the waters to be still, then we must have that undying knowingness that I of myself can do nothing. And it is the wonder of the source that allows the waves to be made still. There may be waves crashing around me, but I don't have to go up and down with them. I can just lie in the water and look at the sky and melt into nature and feel that oneness that I felt when I was a little kid. Prayer isn't a magic incantation, but I think once we begin to practice prayer wholly, that what happens is magical. And it can be so simple. A deep breath. A pause. Just a moment. Watching a little kid playing in a puddle and learning about the wet nature of water. It's every moment. And so, with each breath, I remind myself there is one God, one mind, which moves the substance to every form. And I know that as God expresses itself in and as and through me and through all of life, I am lit from within, a crystal sun, endless facets casting rainbows and calling out for other rainbows. I cast the rays of my belief upon the field, and it reflects them back to me. A perfect opportunity to see myself and adjust my thinking to an even purer state. And I lift my mind to a higher ideal, and I find my heart soaring in a whole new octave. My life is a prayer, and each perfect word brings me closer to the full realization of my God self. I know it, I feel it, and I live it. Thank you.